This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development by a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. Recorded live on Wednesday afternoons in a Google Hangout. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This is episode 49, May 14th, 2014. Assistive Technology with Wade Wingler. Guys, we have another guest with us this week.
Oh, we're on a roll.
We are rolling along. So welcome to episode 49. How's everyone doing? Jason Pimental, you're coming to us from your house.
Yes, I am home this week. Next week I'll be in New York. But, yeah, a little bit quieter week this week.
That's true, except for the painters outside?
Yeah, painters outside. Thankfully, Tristan has decided to give them a break, so he's not barking at them at the moment. Give it time.
That's good. He was barking during the book club this morning.
Yeah, well, he was barking again about 5 minutes before we started.
So at least you calmed him down.
Yeah, well, every once in a while it kind of forgets that it's been the same guys outside the window every day for the past week, and he's certain that we're being invaded by someone.
So have they brought him any treats? I think that's the key for a good painter.
Oh, well, they come in and like pet him whenever they come inside. I mean, they actually are all pretty friendly with him.
Oh, that's good. So he's got some new friends. That's his problem, right?
Yep.
We have John Picozzi joining us from Starbucks out in Aquidneck Island in Rhode Island. Hi, John.
How's it going, everybody? Good.
So you're on your laptop now, and we're hoping the battery will last, and you may have to move to your iPad, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna see. If I disappear and come back a couple of times, you'll know why.
As we look in the Google Hangout here, we actually see two Johns.
Or John and a friendly cow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does anyone want to say which one they prefer better?
We don't have to actually cover that. We all know.
Well, I know it's the cow. It's the cow. I understand.
We also have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design.
How you doing? Looking forward to today's show. It's definitely something that's been coming more and more to the forefront in the Drupal community. Also looking forward to this weekend. On a personal note, it's my first year wedding anniversary. So
congratulations!
Going away should be a good weekend. Thanks.
Good for you. Where are you heading?
Gonna go to New York. Got a friend getting married, so we're going up to Syracuse, and then we're gonna head over to Niagara Falls and do the tour.
Well, that's great. Well, congratulations, Nick. It was about a year ago we started the show, and you just got married, right?
Yep.
That's great. So, as a guest this week, we're talking about assistive technology. In the web world, we probably know the term better a little bit as accessibility. We'll probably talk about what those two different terms mean. But we have joining us from Indiana, we have Wade Wingler. He's been working with Easter Seals Crossroads in Indiana for 21 years. He currently serves as the Director of Assistive Technology, and he's done that for the past 14 years. Anyone who's watching him on the video right now will notice that he has an awesome audio setup like I have, because he is the host of a podcast called the Assistive Technology Update, which I think the episodes are in the 150s, so he's been doing this quite a while, and it is the #1 worldwide podcast for assistive technology. So Wade is also an author. He has 2 self-published books that you can find on Amazon. One's called God Plays Trombone, and the second one is The Skinny on Cycling, a collection of essays on cycling, weight loss, and life. So Jason might have a few questions for Wade about that book. Wade is also a friend of mine, so we've known each other for a few years, and I can tell you personally he's a devoted husband, father, and man of God. More importantly, he's a vegan and a Mac lover. So while many of us are sleeping at 4 a.m. in the morning, he's actually also studying for an MBA. So I'm not sure if you can handle that big intro, but welcome, Wade.
You're making us all.
Stephen, thank you for your generosity and having me on this show and embarrassing me a little bit. So yeah, thanks.
So Wade, thanks for taking the time today. Let's kick right into this. And could you tell us what assistive technology means? I know that's a term that I don't think us in the web world are as familiar with as we would be web accessibility. So what is the difference between those terms?
Yeah, well, so assistive technology for me is kind of funny because it's what I do. It's a word that is kind of running in my DNA, and there's a legal definition that talks about any item or piece of equipment that can be modified, customized to help folks with a disability to be more independent. But really, when we're talking about assistive technology, it's any kind of a device or a gadget or technology that helps a person with a disability to be more independent. So I mean, you guys run into this all the time. Whenever you go to a shopping mall and the doors open automatically for you, that's an assistive technology that was designed to help people in wheelchairs and other mobility issues to get in and out of a building. Other examples include stuff like Braille computer interfaces or Braille Bluetooth keyboards to control your iPhone or your iPad. It might include things like hearing aids or more low-tech stuff to help people with disabilities around the kitchen, around the house, those kind of things. So really, it's any kind of a tool, whether it's high-tech or low-tech, that helps somebody with a disability to do whatever it is they want to do, go to work, go to school, be independent in the community, to reach those goals that they want to.
So what do you guys do at Crossroads to make that happen? What exactly happens there?
Well, here in Central Indiana, Easter Seals Crossroads is a disability service provider organization. So we do the stuff that you might guess. We do physical therapy and occupational therapy, and we work with adults and children who have disabilities within a medical kind of setting. But in terms of our assistive technology programs, we do a lot. We have some consultants, we call them assistive technology specialists, who go out to people's jobs or homes or classrooms and help them figure out what kind of technology might be helpful to help them reach their goals. We assess them, we figure out what they need, we implement that technology, so help them with installation and configuration. We do training services and 24-hour technical support for the folks that we serve. And then we also do a lot to educate people in Indiana and around the world about assistive technology. So we teach at universities. We go out to Rotary Club meetings and do dog and pony shows, kind of show and tell this sort of technology. We also have an enormous assistive technology lending library. We got about 2,500 items that people in the state of Indiana can borrow and try out and see if that's a kind of technology that might help them overcome their challenges. So we do lots and lots of stuff, really. If you can imagine the intersection of disability and technology, that's kind of where we live, and we provide all kinds of supports in that environment.
Now, being based in Indiana and being part of a national organization, which Easter Seals is, can other people find an Easter Seals organization similar to yours in their local states? Do you cover the whole country? So as a web developer, if I'm looking to hook up with a local organization to learn more about accessibility and what I could do in my business locally, where would I go for finding an organization like yours?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have to clarify a little more to kind of understand a bit of a separation. Easter Seals is throughout North America, and Easter Seals organizations always do services with folks with disabilities, but don't always do assistive technology. So some of the Easter Seals organizations do assistive technology. I'm going to say 5 or 6 of them do a lot of it and do it really well. However, we also have a federal grant here, and when folks listen to our show or look at us online, you're going to see the InData Project. And the InData Project is one of the services we provide here at Easter Seals Crossroads. It's a federal grant that basically says teach people in your state about assistive technology. So although there may be an Easter Seals organization nearby, they may not do assistive technology. But every state and territory has a federally funded Tech Act project, and in Indiana we call it InData. So if you're in Rhode Island and you want to know who is your local Tech Act project who can point you to resources, there's a listing of those projects, and I made a quick URL for that. If you go to our website, which is eastersealstech.com/states, it'll take you to a list of them. You can find your local group.
Oh, okay, that's very helpful. Okay, so Wade, what is the difference between what you call assistive technology and maybe a subset of that, which is web accessibility? And I do know you have experience here because you have produced a series of videos that I watched about web accessibility, which were really helpful. So where does web accessibility fit into your world?
Well, there's kind of three concepts that probably apply here. One is assistive technology, and we've talked about, the fact that it's special technology to help folks with disabilities. And then there's another one that gets called universal design. And I'll spend a second talking about universal design because we see that in our world all the time. If you go to the gym and somebody has the captions turned on, so that people who are running on the treadmill can see what's going on, that wasn't designed necessarily for people who are on treadmills in gyms. It was designed for folks who are deaf. But the issue is that's really helpful for a lot of different folks. The same way with curb cuts, out in the environment. Curb cuts were originally designed to help people in wheelchairs to get up and down, the edge of the sidewalk. But it's really helpful if you're pushing a baby carriage or a shopping cart or things like that. So we have assistive technology, which is technology designed specifically for a person with a particular kind of disability. So if you're blind, you might use a Braille interface. And then we have universal design, which are things that you can do to make your website or your shopping mall accessible to everybody. And then we get into web accessibility, which in the Twitter sphere gets abbreviated A11Y or A11Y, and I can talk about that a little bit more. And that's a situation where you're specifically developing your web platform and your web content so that it works well for people who use assistive technology. So you've got, the special technology used by folks with disabilities, assistive technology. You got universal design, which is stuff that you can do that kind of helps everybody. And then you have web accessibility, which means you develop your content in such a way that it works well for folks who use assistive technology.
Well, I think the interesting thing there in that intersection is universal design and web accessibility have so much in common with people that are used to using keyboards for navigation and things that are.
And guys, I'm getting dead air right now. I'm not. If somebody's speaking, I'm not getting it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Jason.
Okay.
Wade, can you hear us now?
I'm hearing everybody but Jason.
Oh, that's weird.
That's strange.
Okay.
All right, that's a first for us in Google Hangout.
Well, hang on one second. Let me just mute and unmute again and just. Wade, can you hear me now? No, I guess not.
That is odd.
It's hard for me to ask him questions.
Yeah, let's just take a look. I can always edit this for the audio later. I'm just curious here why that would be. Nick, can you talk?
Yeah, I can talk. So I find this a fascinating topic, and I find that it's.
Wade, can you hear Nick? I'm just curious.
I'm hearing Nick. Yep,
okay.
I'm hearing Stephen. I'm hearing Nick, and I heard John earlier.
Oh, but you never heard Jason.
I don't think so. I didn't realize that he was talking. I didn't know Jason was here until just now, actually.
Okay.
Still nothing, huh?
Yeah, that's not good. But while Steven's looking into that, I did have a question about awareness, because it seems to me more and more in the last year and a half, people have been making this a ticket item, mentioning that they need 508 compliance, or they need it to be accessible. And I think part of that is because responsive design has come to the forefront. It's about making your website accessible to more devices, and naturally people are now looking at how they can make it more accessible, not just for devices but for demographics. Have you seen that parallel yourself, or is that?
Well, I'm kind of in a unique position because I have been doing assistive technology before there was much of a web platform out there, so that's always been in the forefront for me. But I'll tell you what I am seeing. Because of Section 508 of the Rehab Act and because of the Americans with Disabilities Act 2 laws that say basically thou shalt be accessible, I'm seeing more contract language that requires that. I'm seeing development contracts that say that a lot of times the money that we see flows from or through the federal government and requires 508 compliance. And then we've also seen some lawsuits over the last several years. A big one was between Target Corporation and the National Federation of the Blind about web accessibility and complaints related to that under the ADA. So I'm starting to see more contracts require that. I'm starting to see some lawsuits, that kind of touch that. But I'll tell you, the bigger issue from my perspective is I'm seeing more and more consumers of web content who are aging baby boomers who are having low vision and having trouble with their hearing and some of the accessibility problems that you don't normally think about when it comes to people with disabilities, but you do think about in terms of some of those older demographics.
Just jumping in, Wade, can you hear me now? I guess that'd be a no.
No, Wade still cannot hear you. That is so strange.
So,
Wade,
you
you've been blessed, like John would often say. You've been blessed with not hearing Jason. So Jason, if you don't mind, Jason, put your questions in the chat room, and then one of us can read them. Or there is a chat button in this on the upper left-hand corner in Google Hangout, and you could sort of see the chat that's going on.
Yep. I've got the chat. I won't read the last thing that was in
Please don't.
Wade,
I wanted to... go ahead, John. Sorry.
I'm sorry. You talked about 508 compliance and the ADA. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that, or tell us your experiences with, do companies come to you and ask about those sorts of things, come to your organization and ask about those sorts of things before they put out an RFP? And I guess this is kind of like a three-parter. But I've seen a lot of RFPs lately that have language in them about 508 compliance and being, the website being accessible. And, I'm wondering, a lot of people don't know that, legally, by the U.S. Constitution, they have to be accessible to these folks. So I'm wondering, ultimately, are you seeing or having people come to you, ask these questions, doing the research before they put out an RFP?
Yeah, we are, and in fact, that's one of the roles and responsibilities that I have for the state of Indiana, is to try to be helpful when people do come early on with those kind of questions. But I don't see it a whole lot. Most of the time, I see not private companies, but I see government groups coming to us because the 508 is right in front of them all the time, and they're constantly compelled to make sure that they're doing that kind of a thing. One of the challenges is the waters are still a little bit muddy from a legal perspective, because although there have been lawsuits and there have been corporations that have been successfully penalized for not having accessible web content, there's a lot of muddiness there. The ADA has traditionally applied to physical structures. It applies to a building, and it applies to a museum or a job site being made accessible to somebody with a disability. But there's some argument that the internet doesn't count in the same way, and so case law is still a little bit muddy. With the disclaimer, by the way, that I'm not an attorney, so I'm just telling you what I read, on these topics. But it's a little bit muddy, and quite frankly, a lot of folks don't realize there is no such thing as the ADA police. So nobody comes to you and says, "Hey, your doors aren't wide enough, therefore you get a ticket." I mean, it doesn't happen in the physical world, and then it doesn't also happen online. You have nobody with authority coming to you and saying your website's inaccessible. Nothing happens.
Can I interject there for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, aren't your building inspectors and police departments responsible for policing that sort of thing? Like, you park in a handicapped spot, you get a ticket. You're building, you don't build a building to code, you get, cited. So, I mean, aren't they kind of policing the real world examples of this?
Not exactly. If you apply for a building permit, a new building permit, and you don't build it in such a way that it's compliant, then you might have some trouble. But it's a complaint-based system, and so it's not until somebody decides to sue that or file a complaint with the Department of Justice that the wheels get set in motion. So there are still plenty of inaccessible buildings out there and other inaccessible places in the physical world, and it's not until somebody files a lawsuit or issues a complaint that happens. And so if you think about it, in the internet, when you translate that over to the web, well, that's a much faster changing, scenario or landscape than the physical world. If you build a building with inaccessible components, that's not going anywhere quickly, but it's pretty easy to say, well, that was the website that we had up, 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, and we've completely changed it since then. So it's a much faster moving target for the world of accessibility. So that's why it's a little bit unclear. Now, from my perspective, as somebody who works with Easter Seals and tries to champion this cause, altruistically, absolutely, I feel everybody should be intrinsically motivated to make their content accessible. But when it comes down to, lawsuits and actual penalties, it's a little bit muddy.
So I'm going to continue to equate accessibility like terms to responsive terms, just because I think that they're analogous and that you're making it more available to more people, more devices. And you can say, if you were to boil down, the most important thing in responsive, I guess, would be, don't use hard and fast rules, don't use pixels, use percents, etc. Is there a similar tenet for making a website accessible? Or is there what is the single most important thing you can do to make it available to the widest audience? Not saying that it will get you 508 compliance, but what is something that you see very commonly on websites that people don't do that is really just easy to do and make it so much better for everybody out there?
Yeah, so all my web accessibility guys are going to roll their eyes when I say text tags on images is probably still the most ubiquitous problem that I see out there. Tons and tons of images, whether they're a photograph or a diagram or just a button, are not properly labeled. And so that's probably the number one issue that folks continue to complain about even years later. And the way that plays out, if one of the things that we deal with web accessibility a lot and assistive technology is how it works for screen reader users. And if you haven't dealt with a screen reader in the past, that is technology that will read out loud or via Braille information to somebody who's blind or visually impaired. And if you want to try one, if you're on a Mac, hit Command F5 and one will turn on. Or if you want to try one on Windows, download a program called NVDA, Non-Visual Desktop Access, and that'll give you a free screen reader to play around with and see what that's like. But what happens is a screen reader generally is going to read a web page like you or I might read a book. It's going to read from left to right and top to bottom, which inherently could be a problem depending on the way the website is designed. But when the screen reader moves down through a website, it's going to read text as text, links as links, and when it comes to an image, it's going to look for that alt tag and read whatever is associated with that alt tag. And if you've called it something like, home button or, a menu item and give it a name, then it's going to read that text label that you stick on it. If not, it's going to say something like image, or it might even read, the URL to that image if it's also a link. So it's incredibly important to have those non-visual or those visual images labeled in such a way that a screen reader user can get to it.
Okay.
It's very interesting that you bring that point up, because to bring it back to Drupal for a few minutes, as developers, we always give clients the option to add alt text as well as a title description to their images, and it's very interesting to see how you explain to the client that this is for accessibility, and it often gets overlooked when adding content. Whether it's because they're just busy and they overlook it, or it's just simply not knowing what to put in those fields. I'm not 100% sure, but even with the tools for people to not have these problems, it's still an issue that plagues the internet.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the more
Yeah,
people
it
use
does.
content management systems, the more it's an issue.
You know, a good resource, by the way, and Nick, your question about, you know, if you had to pick one thing to do well, is the W3C. They have a web content accessibility set of guidelines, and it's called WCAG a lot in our world. But if you go to w3c.org/WAI for Web Accessibility Initiative, they've got very detailed descriptions on how to create accessible content. But then they also do some overview kind of things that help you understand the bigger picture of why. And it talks about the fact that content should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and then robust. And so when you think about perceivable, a lot of folks who are using assistive technology don't even perceive things that might not be, you know, labeled appropriately. So we talked about alt tags. Here's another one. If you have a website where the color of text means something in terms of what the text is, and somebody's colorblind, they're not going to get that. So if you've got a thing that says red links below mean this, and they're colorblind, they may not see that. So in that case, your content and its intention isn't perceivable. Another example of that is if you have video content, and it's like our Google Hangout today, and there's no captioning for somebody who might be deaf or hard of hearing or has a language processing disorder, that content's not perceivable to them either. So it breaks it down into these four categories. The first thing is you got to make your stuff perceivable, and that could mean putting text labels on it, putting captions on it, those kind of things. And then the next layer of priorities is the content needs to be operable. You need to be able to interact with it. And I tell developers, try to interact with your website without your keyboard. Try to only use your mouse or your trackpad and see how far you can get interacting with your website. Do some usability testing that way, and you may find that you hit some roadblocks pretty quickly. Or I'll tell them, do the opposite. Shut off your mouse. Only use your keyboard and see how long you can interact with your content before you run into barriers. Because people with certain physical disabilities have that issue. Their keyboard access may not be good. Their mouse access may not be good. Then the next priority they talk about is the content needs to be understandable. So if you write very complex language, you know, it's kind of okay if you're writing on a scientific website or in a developer's forum, but if you're writing content for the general public, you need to think like the newspaper or advertisers. You need to write your content that doesn't use a lot of jargon, that uses, you know, kind of plainly understood language. And they also talk about understandability in terms of navigation. Do your menus make sense? You know, is the page a mess and you just can't understand where you're supposed to go based on the structure of the document? So the WCAG guidelines do a real good job of saying, okay, here's the big picture, here's the most important stuff, and then breaking it down into code level examples that can help developers.
Okay.
Wade, is there a tool that developers could use? Because I watched your video during the week preparing for today on YouTube, and you demonstrated a screen reader. I don't remember what that was, what the screen reader was, but is there a way for a developer to get access to a screen reader to see that? Or were you just doing was that just the Mac control key that you did that day, or was there some specific software you used?
No, there have been in the past lots of tools, and they've kind of gone away. The one that continues to hang on and I use when I'm looking at web content is a product called the Wave Toolbar, and I don't remember what Wave stands for. It's Web Accessibility something or another, but it's webaim.org/toolbar. And it's a Firefox plugin. And so what it allows you to do is it turns it into a toolbar. You load up the content that you've created, and then you click on it. And what it does a number of things, but the most important thing, I think, is it reloads your website, and then it overlays red, yellow, and green icons in certain areas. So if you did something good in terms of accessibility, it'll put a little green sticker on it and say, you know, this is why it's a good thing. If you've done something that is clearly an accessibility barrier, it'll put a red sticker on it right there in line and tell you what the problem is and give you a link to where you can learn more about how to fix that particular kind of problem. And then if it gives you a yellow sticker, that means that you need to do a manual kind of check. You need to go and it's something that the automated tool can't do. You need to look at it kind of objectively. And that makes sense when you're looking at things like, are menus clear and easy to understand? Well, you can't really automate that kind of an evaluation. You got to look at it with a set of human eyes and with some understanding. But it's a free tool, and it's really good.
That's great.
Jason says that's great.
I don't believe in this Jason you keep talking about.
That's right. Jason is the fictitious person. He's
I
our
gotta-
alter ego for the show. Wade, what are some of the biggest advances you've seen in assistive technology and web accessibility over the last few years? Like, is this any technology that's come out that's like turned things around for disabled people?
Yeah, iOS, and my quick disclaimer is I'm an Apple fanboy, and I get ribbed for that sometimes, but iOS has made a dramatic impact on the world of assistive technology. I'll give you some examples. When I started doing assistive technology back in the early 90s, voice input was very early in its infancy. We used a program called IBM Voice Type, and it was the predecessor to what is now Dragon Naturally Speaking or Dragon Dictate, and it required about a $10,000 computer with about a $3,000 sound card, and the program was about $3,000. And all you could do was dictate letter by letter, but you had to use the phonetic alphabet. You had to say Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf, and so on to dictate into it. And so you were talking about, $12,000 to $15,000 worth of equipment to get that level of voice control on your computer. Well, fast forward to today, and my smartphone has, natural language dictation built into it that is phenomenal. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And we see that tablet computers and iOS has really changed the way that people who are blind or visually impaired and who have other kind of disabilities really interact with web content. Even as few as 5 years ago, if you wanted to read a web page with a screen reader, you were looking at a $1,000 piece of software. And now it's built into your iPhone. And so you have the ability to turn on VoiceOver on your iPhone and have it read out loud. And I see the same kind of advancements for folks who have other kinds of intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities. The touch interface has made a huge impact on people who have disabilities like autism, or they have cognitive challenges. The ability to look at something on a screen and reach up and touch it and get it to do something is really important for folks who use those kind of technologies for like communication systems. So, I've got friends who are cognitively challenged, and they're not literate. They can't sit and type an email or even type in a message that can be read out loud by a computer. They interact with pictures, so maybe they turn on their iPad and there's a picture of the kitchen, and they hit the button that's the kitchen, and it opens up and then gives them language related to the refrigerator and the pantry and things that you find in the kitchen. And to do that with a keyboard and a mouse just several years ago was a huge deal, because if cognitively, you can't handle language, handling the disconnect between a mouse and a keyboard and interacting with it on the screen is likely going to be a big problem. So the ability to have this picture of your kitchen in front of you on an iPad and touch the pantry, and then it opens up and shows you things in the pantry and lets you tell, your roommate or your mom, I really want peanut butter and jelly right now, is something that couldn't even be done, before, or without a very specialized, very expensive kind of device.
So then, do you think that some of these advances are just being enabled by new technologies, or do you think that the need for this is helping drive new technology? Or is it a combination?
It gets used so often on iOS.
I have found in the 20 years of doing this that assistive technology follows on the heels of mainstream technology, and so we kind of get the benefit of some of those developments. It's an unpleasant truth that the world of folks with disabilities, although the numbers are increasing, don't have enough market share to drive that level of research. So Microsoft and Apple and some of the big hardware manufacturers obviously have an accessibility division within them. They have folks, and that's their job, to deal with that kind of stuff. But they're not a main driver in any of those organizations. And so what we saw in the past was very specialized technology. The situation where I described the kitchen cabinet and peanut butter and jelly, that was a $10,000 or $15,000 device 10 years ago, and the company that sold them probably sold low thousands, if maybe high hundreds of those devices for people with disabilities. So there's this trade-off happening in our industry right now where these big, clunky, expensive devices that were only for folks with disabilities are slowly being replaced by iPads or tablets with apps that do much of the same kind of thing. And so I guess I have to say that mainstream technology is moving ahead, and the assistive technology industry is kind of capitalizing on that. So Jason, I see you're in the chat room saying this is incredibly frustrating, giving me a taste of accessibility challenges. So yeah, I think you're feeling a little nonverbal right now.
Well, what the funny thing is
right,
Jason has spoken up a few times, and then we've all trampled all over him.
And I'm the only one with an excuse.
That's right. And you're the one doing the trampling, by the way. So that's okay. So this is the first time for this to happen, so that's fine. We'll blame it on John being at Starbucks.
There we go.
Yeah, it's probably all my fault. So
Jason, you have a question, I think. So if you want to verbalize it, we'll just sort of say it back. So Wade can input on it. That's fine. We can deal with it.
Well, I think there's the two things that I've seen that have been so good. Google Glass and iOS both actually seem to be really pioneering things for accessibility, even in some ways more so for accessibility than for non-challenged people. And that I think that's actually, there's an instance there where that's actually leading common adoption, especially with Google Glass.
You know what? Wait. I'm translating here.
Hi, caller. Can we get your question in 10 words or less?
Wade, Jason was just bringing up Google Glass, and I know you recently had an episode about Google Glass. So he was commenting on how maybe Google Glass is maybe spearheading some new advances in this technology. Wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Well, for the world of assistive technology, it's all still kind of emerging. I haven't seen any Google Glass apps for folks with disabilities yet, but I think the implications are tremendous. There's a whole field of assistive technology dedicated to helping people who have cognitive challenges and autism and those kind of things to more smoothly and better interact with their world. Here's a great example. Years ago, we worked with a college student who was an engineering genius who had technical skills like crazy, but wasn't able to interact with people or professors very well. Would do things like go to class and sit there at the designated time, but class got canceled and nobody told him, so he would sit there for the entire hour by himself, not knowing that he wasn't supposed to do that. The rules just didn't apply in that situation. And so there's been a number of technologies designed over the years, based on smartphones mostly, to help people navigate that kind of stuff. Well, the implication of Google Glass is you could have somebody who's a coach to you, looking through your eyes and interacting, helping you interact with your environment in a way that would be, totally different and provide lots of opportunities. So, imagine you're that same college student and you're walking, down campus, and you see a pretty girl, and somebody who's kind of your Cyrano de Bergerac through Google Glass could then say, hey, that was that girl that said hello to you yesterday. Say hi, or maybe do something a little more academic. But I think there's lots of opportunities for Google Glass to be used. There's a technology that's not based on Google Glass, but that's similar technology that's designed to help people who have low vision better navigate their physical environment. So imagine if you had low vision, you could see, but you saw shapes and shadows, you didn't see anything in detail, and you go, walking around a campus or around your city, and you could have somebody who's sitting at their desk watching what you're seeing through your glasses and could help you navigate and say, wait a minute, there's a pothole there, or hey, Starbucks is coming up on the left, you said something about wanting a cup of coffee. So I think that although we haven't seen anything hit, merchandisable sort of levels yet, we're starting to see a lot of stuff there that I think is promising.
Wade, what percentage of the population is disabled in some way as it would relate to interacting online? Do you have some sort of number like that?
Yeah, the most recent information tells us that if you count people who are considered to have a disability by the census definition, and there's a lot of things that go into that definition, but that includes baby boomers. The reason I qualify it, it's about 1 in 5. So about 1 in 5 people in the U.S. have some sort of a significant disability and might benefit from accommodations of some kind or assistive technology. That's a pretty big market share.
Right. So if you're a web developer, ignoring accessibility is potentially ignoring, a fifth of the potential audience for your website or your service that you're offering.
That's exactly right. And if you do the numbers in the Google Hangout, it's like me ignoring Jason, which is 1/5 of the people in this show.
And we can see how frustrating that is, right, Jason?
I don't even know if he's laughing or not right now.
Can you actually see him?
No, I see an avatar.
Oh, really? That is fascinating.
I just see an avatar.
This is actually a perfect. This is a perfect way to have this show happen. Actually, right?
The real funny thing is that the funniest thing here is the fact that I don't have any internet or power. Well, I have internet, but no power, and I'm doing better than Jason is. I got nothing. So
I can actually respond to John verbally. I just can't respond to Wade. Maybe that's better, John.
Right.
We did talk about some tools that people could use to test out accessibility issues, and one that I don't know that we talked about that Jason and I have both actually used in the past is a website called CynthiaSays.com. And I find that website's actually really useful for pointing out things you may have overlooked or problems that people will have with your sites. Wade, are there any other tools out there that specifically web developers and people that are building web apps can use to kind of assist them in identifying these issues and correcting them?
Can you not hear John too?
No, I hear Nick and I hear Steven.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. So he just asked the question. He said that he's asking if there were other tools that you were able to use, and if you had heard of one in particular. Jason and John had used a tool called CynthiaSays.com that will allow you to take a look at a site that you've been working on, and it will point out, kind of similar to the Firefox plugin you were talking about, what areas you need to take a closer look at, and that they found it really helpful. Is that something that you've used, or?
That's not one. No, it's not. I think I recall it being one of the tools that was widely used a while back, but I haven't seen that one in a while. So, but it sounds like it does a lot of the same stuff the Wave toolbar does. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I cannot be more fascinated by the fact that we're having an accessibility show here, and that two of the people at this point can't be heard. And in this 50 minutes, Jason, how frustrated are you by this?
I'm incredibly frustrated because the one person I want to talk to about this stuff can't hear me.
Right.
I mean, it's not that I wouldn't want to talk to you guys, but I mean, he's got like such a great wealth of experience.
And that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I can't even imagine how people get through the day. It astonishes me.
I think Wade's gonna have to watch the video after.
So Wade, Jason is expressing his frustration in that he, in this short period of time, how aggravated he is that he can't speak to you. But and man, how does that even translate to someone who lives with this 24/7?
Well, I hope I'm not speaking over somebody right now because you guys are dropping like flies. But we do that in our world. We pretend to understand, and we tend to, when there's an unusual situation like this, and people interacting with folks with disabilities often is like this, especially with folks who have communication challenges. It's like this. We smile, we nod, we pretend to understand, we step all over each other, and I think that this probably is a pretty good, representation, because I don't even know what I'm missing, right? I don't know what's being said by Jason and now John. The other thing that's probably important to recognize is disability is dynamic. It's not static, so people tend to lose their vision or lose their hearing or lose some of their abilities, much like I had John earlier, but now I've lost John too. So I'm experiencing a deterioration of my challenges here during the show.
Interesting.
Yeah, the show is kind of
The
turning
chat room
into
says
like
that might be
a
an
bad
improvement.
game, a bad game of telephone here, where I'm saying something. In the beginning, Jason was saying something. Now I'm saying something, and somebody else is communicating it down the line there. Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting.
So we're probably at the point of the show to, just because of the struggles with our disabilities right now, is to maybe wrap some of this up. Are there any other questions that were sort of burning that we didn't get to with Wade? And today's show is really to sort of touch the surface of this topic, and we will be having future shows about this that we might dig into some more technical side of, specifically when it comes to what Drupal 8 is going to be providing. Nick.
I did have one question, and this I don't know if it's something that you've done any thinking about, Wade, but there's some research being done in providing additional senses for people, and one of the particular pieces of research I'm thinking of is a group attached GPS basically vibrators belts to people, and it would buzz in the direction of north, and they found that within 2-3 weeks or months or so, people didn't even feel the sensation anymore, but were able to always know what direction they were facing even when they removed the belt. So is there any research or any market or any thought being put into providing, rather than just assisting them with their disabilities, providing them with alternative paths to solving some of the issues that they might have, and allowing, instead of just directly solving the problem, just providing an additional skill set that will help them navigate through life?
A little bit. That's interesting. I'm particularly interested in some of the new interfaces that are designed to provide that accommodation. There's a lot being done with haptics, those vibration interfaces that can simulate things like Braille and raised lines and textures and stuff like that. I'm also fascinated in how 3D printing can be used to teach kids who might have various kinds of disabilities what objects are and how to interact with them. But you're talking about something that really is it's a little bit different than that. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be interviewing a researcher named Dr. Gregor Wolbring, who was involved with a movie called Fixed, F-I-X-E-D. And they talk about in that movie, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Wolbring about the fact that we have people who have disabilities, and we've tried to provide them assistive technology. And in some cases, we've overshot the mark. What's the Paralympic athlete? Oscar Pretorius, I think, was the guy's name, who ended up is now maybe or maybe not a criminal. But his legs were engineered and designed in such a way that he could outrun his able-bodied counterparts. And as we talk about cognitive prosthetics and some of the work that's being done in that area, it's designed to help people who have intellectual challenges to kind of catch up with their peers, but in some cases maybe you're going to be teaching them things that will help them be superior in a lot of ways to the people who don't have the disabilities that they were trying to accommodate in the first place. So that's a little bit science fiction for me at this point, but I'm starting to see some of the precursors to that sort of play out, and I'm really excited to talk to Dr. Wolbring about that because that's his area of study, so that'll be an interesting conversation I have coming up.
So Wade, what is the URL to your show?
The easiest way to get to our show is assistive-technology-update.com. That'll take you to a section of our website where all the podcasts are listed there.
Okay, great. All right, so before we wrap up the show here, John, you had something else you want to ask?
I just wanted to ask one more question of Wade, and it's kind of a simple one. We talked earlier on about testing and testing, kind of doing user testing for accessibility issues, and I'm wondering if your company Easter Seal has any resources for web developers or any programs to help the web community basically do user testing with people that are actually have certain disabilities.
That's a good question. And Wade, you couldn't hear that, right?
No, I'm sure it was a great question.
So John's question, and I'm going to make it a little bit broader. He was asking if your company provides resources for people like web developers like us who want to work with disabled people to do software testing. Is that a service you provide, or is it common for organizations like yourself to work with web developers to provide testing services or something so we can, as a community of web developers, can get better at what we're doing?
So I'm glad you asked that question because I had two more points I wanted to make before we wrap up, and that was one of the two. So we don't here at Easter Seals Crossroads, and most of the Tech Act projects that I talked about that are in the 56 states and territories don't do high-level consulting or code-level consulting. They do general kind of stuff. So generally not. However, there are two resources that are useful. One is there's a growing GitHub resource out there that's called the A11Y Project, and I believe it's A11yproject.com, and that's where developers are talking about this topic at a very technical level. And A11Y, by the way, is a Twitter hashtag, A11Y, and it's the word accessibility with 11 letters missing from the middle. So it's A and then 11 letters Y, which would be accessibility. So if you look on the web or search Twitter for A11Y, you're going to find lots of conversations. Or if you go to A11yproject.com, that's where the GitHub is. And then there are some emerging companies and consulting firms who are providing that service. I interviewed the head of one called Weco several weeks ago, and it's theweco.com, THEWECO.com, and they employ people with disabilities to do that kind of accessibility testing. And it's really cool because not only do they employ people with disabilities to do that testing, but they ramp them up and teach them how to do a number of technical things. So folks with disabilities work there to do accessibility testing, but then also develop skills that they can take somewhere else and go out and become programmers and stuff like that. So those are the resources I would recommend.
Wait, is it common? Is it common? It's a tough way to phrase this, but would it be unusual for a web development agency to reach out to you guys and say, "Hey, we'd like to learn more. Can we come in and talk to you?" kind of thing? Is that something that happens in your world?
It used to, but anymore we refer them to online resources anymore because they're going to get more rich, more better stuff with those online resources.
And you could give them, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, Wade, did you have one more point you wanted to bring up too as well? You said.
You know what? No, I think I got them. I want to mention the GitHub and the Weco.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. So let's move on to our last segment for every week, which is the module of the week.
Do I get to talk now?
You can talk, and Wade, you can just smile and nod. Okay.
So the module this week is called transliteration, and it's a great little helper module that can address issues of file naming, because if you know when you upload files in Drupal, it doesn't do anything to ensure that it's a properly named file. So that might lead to its own accessibility issues, because it's pretty common for people to have file names with spaces in them and all that. And what transliteration does is it will automatically clean file names when you upload them, and then store them with underscores for spaces, and it'll clear out illegal characters and that sort of thing. So you'll have a much more automated, kind of cleaner way of doing things. And if you have already uploaded files, it will give you a list of them, and then you can go back and correct them if you want and upload them again with clean file names. So it's a great little helper module that I always keep in my basic stack, so that all the uploaded files will end up with sort of legal file names that won't cause issues down the road.
Jason, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Does that module resave the file with the new file name, or does it upload the original to the server and create some sort of reference to it in the database?
No. When you add if the module is already installed and you upload a file, it will rename the file as it is saving it on the server. So it will never, like, the wrong file name will never exist. So you upload it, it cleans it up and saves it and stores that file name attached to the node, or however else you're doing it.
Is there a record of that on the server somewhere that it has made that change?
I don't think so, but the system never has any knowledge of the other file name, so it kind of doesn't matter. It just ensures that anything that gets uploaded by a content administrator is always going to be named safely.
Yeah, it's pretty useful. It's one of those ones also that if you install it in the beginning, you just install it and forget about it.
Right.
Pretty much. But I think it also supports tokens.
Yep.
And a couple other things. So it's very useful.
Yeah, it's one of those things that won't matter until all of a sudden you're trying to link to files and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden everything breaks because you can't name the link correctly.
Right. All right. Very good. All right. So let's call this thing done, I'd say. So let's do sort of a roll call to wrap up here. It was certainly an interesting show, Wade. I appreciate you taking the time today to join us, and we actually got a really good sense of what people might be struggling with some accessibility, although we can't pretend 1 hour would even represent what they're living with at all, but it certainly gives our listeners even a sense of what the frustrations might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for allowing me a chance to come on. And Jason and John, I hope to get to meet you someday.
Yeah.
So Wade, if people are looking to reach out to you or learn more about what you're doing or follow the things you're doing, what is the best way for them to follow Wade?
I would suggest you're going to find most of the stuff related to me at our website, which is eastersealstech.com. And you'll see we put content out there Monday through Friday. You'll find links to the podcast, the YouTube channel, and all the stuff we're doing with assistive technology. So that's a great place, eastersealstech.com.
Wade, thank you for coming. And Jason, how about you?
You can find me online at jpomentel, pretty much anywhere, at hwdesignco.com. And if you're going to be around in New York next week, I think there's still a few spots left for a free workshop I'm giving next Friday at AIGA on responsive typography.
Okay, great. Where could people find more information about that?
Actually, if you go to brandperfect.org and look at their live events, you'll see listings for it right there, and you can sign up.
Okay, and one more thing I'd like you to mention is the upcoming publication that you're involved with.
Thank you, sir. I have a book that will be available from O'Reilly this week, possibly as early as today for an early release on web typography. So the book title is Responsive Typography, and if you look at it in the early access section on O'Reilly's website, you'll see it listed there, and should be available for sale within the next day or so.
Or you can go to responsivetypography.com.
ResponsiveTypographyBook.com.
Boy, I'm helping everybody out here today. All right. And John, how about you?
You can find me on all the social networks at John Picozzi, and always on at oomthings.com. You can subsequently find me if you're in the Providence area tonight at Drupal PVD, which will be at the Founders League, 95 Chestnut Street, downtown Providence. We'll be talking to the guys from Brown University about how they're using Drupal and how they have used Drupal for the past 3 to 5 years.
And in the past 3 years, they've spun up 250 websites in Drupal related to Brown University. It's pretty fantastic.
They've built a whole ecosystem over there using Drupal, and it's really, really impressive. And looking forward to hearing about that tonight.
Jason, will you be attending?
Yes, I will. I will be
Nick,
there.
how about you? Coming down from Boston?
Not sure about it tonight.
Okay.
Possibly.
All right. Well, hopefully we get to see you. And if we don't see you tonight, where can we find you online, Nick?
For the interested parties, you can find me at NicksFan pretty much everywhere. And like I said, this weekend in New York, but I'll be kind of celebrating, so no need to ask for an autograph.
Just what you want people doing, tracking you down in New York on your 1-year anniversary.
I suppose if somebody wants my autograph that bad, I'll give it to them.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for your time. Wade, we'll talk to you soon. And that's it. Next week is episode 50. Looking forward to that.
It's a milestone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.